Today we are in week 2 of a 3-week series that's going to lead us to Palm Sunday and Easter. It's titled The Sacred Gateway. Last week I reminded us of the sayings that you are the light of the world, you are the salt of the earth. In other words, you're an active presence on this earth of spirit and expression. You are a gateway. Originally, the followers of Jesus were called the followers of the way. It wasn't following in a way. They were followers of the way, with the understanding that each and every one were created to be the way, the doorway, the opening. If it is to be, it is up to me. If there's going to be peace in your world, it will come through who? You. If there's going to be joy in your life, it will come through whose life? Your life. If there's going to be these qualities that we want on earth, it will come through our lives. And so last week, as we kicked off the series, The Sacred Gateway, we began talking about the importance of spiritual nature, of knowing our spiritual identity. Well, today we move to part 2. And that is the importance of your vision. Not just vision, but the importance of your vision. I read of a spiritual or a corporate coach who had a new young client that came in. And this coach asked the client, so what is your vision? What is your vision for your life? Person thought a minute. Well, I guess my vision is to be the person my dog thinks I am. And we laugh, and it is funny, but if you have a dog like mine, you know that's a great vision. Because what the person was really speaking to is what a lot of us desire. The person was saying, I want to be a person that is worthy of unconditional love. You know, tail-wagging unconditional love. I want to be a person that is seen as someone who is loyal and dependable and stands up to my word, looks after what I love. So that young man's answer was really a pretty profound answer. And so I ask you, what is your vision for your life? And do you realize that it's really important to spend some time thinking about this? And not only thinking about it, but really living into it. Now, you don't need to broadcast it and tell the world your vision, but unless you know your vision, the scriptures say that without a vision, the people perish. That where there is no vision, people perish. That word perish in that context doesn't mean like we thirst to death or starve to death, no. It means without an inspired vision, we run amok. There's actually one translation that says without an inspired vision, we run wild. But not in a fun, good way. It means that our energy is scattered. We're like the leaf blowing around in the wind that is very busy but has no roots. We may find ourselves in constant motion, but there's no real meaning to that motion. But having vision in our lives is so, so, so important. And sometimes we don't like to talk about these things, and I don't like to elevate these things, but it's important to speak the truth. And the truth is, there are a lot of visions alive in the world today. And some of those visions are not anything I want to be a part of. And I don't think you do either. There are evil imaginings of the heart that are showing up as vision. And we know we don't focus on that. We're not giving attention to that, but we're also not putting our head in the ground and pretending that it's not happening. And if those or other visions that I would not want to be a part of are gaining momentum or alive and well, then as my grandmother would say, honey, it behooves you to get your vision out and dust it off and make sure that you have a vision that you're living into. So would you be willing to spend some time this week thinking about your vision? Your vision, why it matters. Your vision is your answer to your why in life. It gives you reason, it guides you, it tells you the kind of person you want to be. It's what you want to build your life around. It's what you want to stand for, be known for. It's your living legacy. Again, without a vision, we perish. Helen Keller said the only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. To have a vision. Your vision is your North Star, and if we don't have a vision, this is what tends to happen. We tend to operate in hectic mode, some kind of default mode. You know the real meaning of default. We hear default used so often now, such as, can you change this setting on my computer? It's on a default mode and I don't know how to get it off. It's the automatic thing that the factory just put there. But before that, the word default was used like this. They lost the baseball game by default because they didn't show up. Default really means loss due to not showing up. And when we look at it that way, it's like, gosh, I don't want any part of my life just running on default. I want it to be deliberate. I want it to be deliberate and intentional. And so we tend to be running in crisis mode or scattered mode. We may feel stuck or lost or like something's a little bit off and can't quite identify it. We may find ourselves being a person that reacts. We live in reaction rather than creating. I realized one day that the word create and react are the exact same letters, just rearranged. It's about how we arrange our priorities. We tend to drift. We tend to imitate. We tend to listen to what other people's are. Is it just me, or do any of you have other people tell you what they think the vision of your life should be? And we tend to spend ourselves either grappling with that or not knowing what to do with it. And so we truly need that vision. I love the quote by the wonderful Mary Oliver. So tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? That's what your vision is about. So 3 things to ask ourselves or to consider. Number 1 is to know that your vision matters to you. It really matters to you. No one else is created just like you, with your experiences, with your perspective. And your vision matters, and so it matters to you. It gives your life direction. It helps pull you through those difficult times. It gives you something to harness your resourcefulness around. When I graduated from seminary at Unity in 2004. As a young minister, I had had a successful corporate career up until that time, and then now I was a brand new minister, 2004, and in Lawrence, Kansas. Well, the next Unity annual conference, they announced, we're going to try something different. And they planned an Alaskan cruise, that all of these ministers would go on an Alaskan cruise to have our conference. And I thought, sign me up. I am going to that. So I was so excited to be on this cruise, and it really was a wonderful time of meeting and having those excursions and different things. Well, one morning we had been up particularly early to see an iceberg. And so when I finally left, it was kind of odd timing, and I went down to get some breakfast, and I found myself in line behind the Reverend Edwin Gaines. Does anyone recognize that name? If you've been around Unity or Centers for Spiritual Living, Edwin Gaines is a powerful minister, speaker, teacher, author. She's just a force of love and fierceness, and I considered especially as a new minister, she was there as a keynote speaker and a mentor, really. She didn't know me very well, but I was in line behind her, and she turned around. Now, she's from Alabama. So she says, well, hey, honey, aren't you a Unity minister? And so I said, I am, from Lawrence, Kansas. You want to have breakfast together? And I'm like, oh, yes, that would be great. Great. And so we get our breakfast, and we sit down, and I can't hardly even eat. And as soon as she sits down, she says, now, honey, what's your vision? That's a good question, Edwin. You mean like my vision for my ministry, for my life? What's your vision? And I started stammering and trying to come up with the one that was on my resume that I couldn't really remember. And she said, honey, if you're not following your vision, you're following the fellow that's following his. If you're not following your vision, you're following the fellow that's following his. I never forgot that. But she didn't skip a beat. She said, so ask me my vision. And I said, so what is your vision? She put her fork down. She looked at me and she said, my name is Edwin Gaines. And what I want you to know about me is I am a woman of power. And I am a woman of passion, and I care deeply about you and about me and about all men and women and beings on this earth. And it is my full intention to make a difference while I am on this planet. I was so fired up, I could have jumped over and swam back to Seattle after that. I'm like, wow. Her being so clear about hers. And if you've ever attended any of her presentations, she starts every single one of those with that. And she means it. And it's not something she just says to kind of make it true. This is something, if you know her story, it took her years to arrive at that, all right? It took her living in poverty. It took her being a mother of a child out of wedlock. It took her being abandoned in another country and having to find her way home. It has taken her through many, many muddy paths and led her to a point where she could stand this day and say, I've had to uncover a lot of the lotus of my being, but this is my vision and this is who I am. Now, see, the powerful thing about your vision for yourself is you must be in that vision. It's not like a pageant where they say, what is your vision? And you're like, well, I wish for world peace. No, how do you see yourself in that vision? Because unless you see yourself in that vision, it's not really your vision. There's some questions we can ask ourselves, and our vision evolves. But don't have fear of making a commitment. Well, I don't want to say what my vision is because it might be too small. I don't want to say it. Might claim it, build on it, and it will evolve you. Your vision is about who you become in the process. It will evolve you. Some of the things you can ask yourself is, well, what inspires me? What lights up my soul? And conversely, what breaks my heart? What just so infuriates me when I see it play out in this world? What are the things I wish I could change and do something about? What do people come to you for? What do they know you're good at and naturally drawn to? And what pulls you forward? Those are some things we can ask ourselves to really connect with. What is my vision? Many of the things that I've heard over the year when people share their vision, a vision should include your I am. One person said, well, I am the best version of myself. I want to be the best version of myself I can be, spiritually, mentally, in every way. That's a powerful vision. Another one said, I want to break generational cycles and build a strong, loving family. Or I want to help all children know they are loved. I want to create a business that empowers others, that gives back to the community, that gives me the abundant resources I need to make a big impact in my world. I am an artist whose work helps inspire people to reflect and connect deeply. I am someone who changes how education works in underprivileged communities. I'm someone who helps educate others about the way we understand death and dying. I am someone who has a farm-to-table truck, and I help people understand the value of what goes in their body. I am someone that has risen to a place of sobriety, peace, and nonviolence, and I help others live that. A year ago, I was at Lake Junaluska for a conference, and I met a woman, and in talking to her, I discovered that she's a makeup artist. And not only a makeup artist, her clients are like Paula Deen and celebrities. So she was a makeup artist for Hollywood's TV celebrities. And when we began to talk about that, she and her husband and their children now travel in an RV. They do a lot of things that you would consider spiritual. But this is what I so loved. When I asked her about her vision, she said, I am a person of beauty. I radiate beauty within and without, and I help other people connect with and recognize their beauty within and out. Now, can you see how you could be a makeup artist? Or you could be a person that says, I am a being that radiates beauty. Same thing you're doing, but boy, there's a different energy in how you do it. Amen? And so connecting with that quality of vision is so powerful. Those things are so powerful for us. So your vision matters to you. Number two, your vision matters to me. It matters to us. Why? Because your being is not isolated. Your being is interconnected. You are not isolated. You are interconnected. Would you say that? I am. I am not isolated. I am interconnected. We are bumping into, feeling, possibly following other people's visions. And so your vision matters to the collective, to the whole. And it doesn't have to be, your vision may not be the kind of vision that other people would see it as something grand or touching a lot of people, but don't compare. Don't compare. I had the pleasure of knowing Ram Dass. He lived on Maui. And I literally went to his house a few times, and so I was at the home of Ram Dass. And he had suffered a stroke, and so he spoke very slowly, but every word you held on to because they were like from God's lips to falling out of his. And he was talking about just being an instrument of God's presence and light. And there was a lady in the group, and she'd been sitting there the whole time, and she was one of those people that was crocheting or doing something like that the whole time, making something. And so when he was talking about that, she said, well, yes, you're that. But she said, but not me. I live on a little pension. I don't know very many people. My vision, my life doesn't really matter. And he said, well, what are you doing there? And now her face began to light up. Well, I'm making this. And he asked her, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this. And her face began to light up when she talked about what she was knitting or crocheting and what she would do with it. And he said, how do you feel while you're doing it? She said, I just kind of lose myself. I'm in such a place of peacefulness and harmony, and I feel at one. He said, so don't ever say it doesn't matter, because if everybody on the planet could embody what you got going on right now while you're creating that thing, we'd have peace on earth. I never looked at those things, so if you need to bring your knitting needles, just bring them on out here. Well, it's perfectly acceptable. Your vision matters to you. Your vision matters to other people. A teacher's vision may heal generations. A mother's vision may transform a lineage. A father's vision may finally break a cycle. A builder's vision may create homes for people that may otherwise never have one. An artist's vision may spark inspiration, the spirit within sparking in me. A business owner, their vision may serve and support others in a way where they need to be met. Our vision truly does matter. Nelson Mandela, falsely imprisoned, held in prison, not 1, 2, 10, 20, 27 years. Nelson Mandela was held in prison. Now, if there's ever a reason to have a vision of revenge, he had one, but that's not what he was about. When Nelson Mandela was in there for those 27 years, he worked on himself. He worked on himself so much he wanted to become the hollow bone, as the Native Americans say, the sacred chalice. He wanted to become the way. And so when he got out of there 27 years later, his vision was not one of revenge. His vision was one of unity and peace. And he transformed a nation, and he helped heal many, many souls. Harriet Tubman literally had dreams and visions, and through those visions, she saved the lives of many people. Your vision matters to you. Your vision matters to others. But your vision also matters because as your vision becomes clear, as your vision is no longer about serving the ego, as the vision is no longer primarily concerned with comparing or getting ahead, as your vision is grounded in something that is worthy and would serve the greater good, we have the capacity to become what I believe you could call the eyes of God. Amen? To begin to be a seer, to see things that want to be manifested on earth. I'm going to ask Jill Haney to come up and share. I'll introduce her in just a moment, but Jill, just come on up. So about 3 years ago, in my prayer time, I started seeing this vision of salt in this church. And I thought that meant, okay, we need to create like a salt wall. Now, many of you know, the ones on you virtually may not, but in Asheville, there's something called a salt cave. Salt has healing properties. You can go and sit in that room that's filled with salt and it's healing. And so I kept seeing this, I didn't know how it would get in here, but sort of a wall of salt. So sometimes your visions have to be refined. When Jesus was healing a man, he first saw him walking. He's like walking upside down, trees upside down. He kept saying, look again. Spirit kept saying, look again. Just keep looking. And about that time, a couple of our congregants, Peter and Karen Eve, wanted to meet with me. And they said, Reverend Darlene, we've got a vision for what this property could be. Not only inside, but this is such a beautiful ground. Just think about what it could be outside. And as I began to listen to them, all of a sudden, chink, 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 things started to fall into place. And then it became clear there was a vision of a prayer wall of peace, an interfaith prayer wall. Now, when I envisioned that, I had no idea that we'd actually have pieces of the Berlin Wall in that. There were visions of that path, that prayer wall extended to become a pathway that goes to our labyrinth, and also had a pet rainbow bridge and a memorial site. And so when the board and I wanted to begin to investigate this, we started looking for stonemasons. We interviewed 1, 2, and then someone told me about Jill Haney. And so I connected with Jill. We connected, and I just knew she'd be the one, the board, we all knew she'd be the one we'd work with for this project. But she was going to be leaving for Greece. So she took off for Greece, and we said, no worries, we'll wait till you get back. What happened when she was in Greece was the end of September last year. You know what happened here. The hurricane came through. The hurricane came through, and homes, people just destroyed. And while Jill was in Greece, her home, she lost her tools, she lost everything she had. She lost all of that and came back, was at her mother's home, right? Your mom's? About the time I called, and just long story short, she said, you know what, I still feel guided. We still were going to do it, so she came to do it. If you've seen that prayer wall, it is a masterpiece. It is nothing short of a powerful masterpiece. And then some of you may have been to places where you've seen the Rainbow Bridge is a poem, a famous poem that talks about when our pets die, they cross over the rainbow and go to the other side where we will meet again. And so it's a symbol for a memorial site. But we wanted a place also for people to hang their pet collars, which she calls necklaces. So they hang their pet collars. And so we asked, and she came up with something she built that was quite beautiful, that's almost complete. But one day during the process, she called me and she said, Darlene, I had a dream. And what I know about Jill has a podcast called Hammered. And if you listen to it, this woman has been to hell and back, should have died many times, has had an incredible life, and is here today. Today she's trained under Louise Hay to teach, to do many, many things. And she has, for some reason, and I know the reason, it's the Holy Spirit, she's been guided to work with us. But she called me and said, Darlene, I had a dream, and I want her to share that with you because it's a powerful vision and it involves you. Would you tell them what you dreamed?
Good morning. First, I just want to say it's a real honor and a privilege to stand here and to be with you. I think I've been with you now almost 6 months. I know a lot of you. I've met a lot of people in the kitchen, and I'm usually dirty. So, when you were talking about the knitters, this is kind of funny, but back in the old days of AA, when I first came in there, I was 24, and these people said, now watch out for the knitters. And I'm like, what? And these women would always sit in the corner and quietly knit. And honey, they knew everything. So it was like if you needed an answer to anything, just ask the knitters, because they never said a word, but honey, they took it in. But anyway, and then another thing, when you were talking about asking a person, what's your vision? That'd be a great thing, like on a first date. Think about it. I always had the one of like, who are you? That'll send them running every time because, think about that question. But now, like, what is your vision? So I can see how that could cut through the chase real quick. But, I had this dream, and I really pay attention to my dreams. And I've learned to cultivate this in myself because they're too bizarre, for one thing. And I know I don't think unless I'm psychotic, unless I make this stuff up. But anyway, I dreamt that I was out at the area where we're going to do this pet memorial. And I was standing in this certain spot, and I looked down, and I didn't have any shoes on. I had bare feet, and I was standing on top of a root system. Now, back in the old days, landscape days in Atlanta, the old rich people say, like, honey, get rid of that old silver maple. Those are trash trees. And I don't know if you remember the root systems of these, but they grow on top of the ground and people can't mow, and they hated them, and I thought they were a beautiful tree, but they'd always get rid of them. But anyway, I'm like standing on this root system that looked like a silver maple root system. And I looked a little closer, and one of the roots began to seep little droplets, and it reminded me of like putting Golden Grain, remember that liquor, into a styrofoam cooler with Hunch Punch. And what would happen is that alcohol ate that styrofoam, and I remember looking at it, and all these little red dots were coming out of the side of that cooler. Well, that's what it looked like, but it was blood. So I look at this root, and there's this seeping little dots of blood starting to come out of the root system. And the more I stood there, now it starts to flow. Now it's coming out like lava, and it's running down onto the ground all around my feet. And I just stood there. Well, when I looked up, and I was standing under this huge tree, this big canopy tree. And when I looked up into the tree, it had like a ticker tape. And I don't know, like when they show the Dow, like going across the screen, like a digital ticker tape. And I look up in there, and it had two words. The word Axis, A-X-I-S, Monday, M-U-N-D-I. And it was running like a ticker tape, continual. And I'm standing there looking at it, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird. I don't even know what that means. I don't even think I've ever seen that word. And so I walked out into the field, and when I looked back at the whole scenario, the tree, the bark and everything was a female body. And she was holding her arms out, branched out, and had her arms became the branches. So it was kind of like some kind of tree of life looking thing. And then I woke up. And so, of course, I Googled Axis Monday, just Google it. And sure enough, it's the connection between heaven and earth. And I said, okay, this is a positive point right where I was standing. So what I did the next day after I ran it by Darlene, I went out to the place where I thought I was standing in the dream. I took a piece of rebar and I drove it in the ground, and I put a string on it, and I went in a certain amount of feet because we had decided about where we wanted to put the pet memorial, but we weren't 100% on point. So I took that, like when you're a kid and you'd do like the compass, and I just took the string and I just marked it, and I just marked it out and drew it out, and I said, okay, that's it. That's where I'm building it. I mean, I have bought houses because of dreams. I've bought houses because my grandmother stepped out from behind a tree and went. And my friends are like, you just live by the seat of your pants. And I said, well, how else is there? I mean, it's like I just listen. I don't know. But anyway, so that is where I built the new pet memorial. And, yesterday when I was leaving, and I told Darlene, I got all the way out to the street, and something said, turn around. So I turned around, I drove back up onto the dirt, and I looked at it, and the prayer wall, when you're standing there, the prayer wall connects to the pet memorial visually. And there was not one bit of math used. There was not one measurement. It just boom, boom, there it is. So anyway, I feel very honored and privileged that I got to build that for this community and for outsiders, I'm sure, because I think you wouldn't believe how many people show up when I'm out there working that don't go to this church. And they come and they talk and they say stuff and I say stuff. And and they want to know me, and and it's this thing, and I never get anything done. I said I'd be done in a week if I didn't have to talk all the time, but it's like this is part of it. So, but anyway, it's been great, and I've had several people. Ginger and Fran brought a little cat rock the other day, and people brought their stuff, and it's been really cool to put that stuff in there. And in fact, this couple of really sweet women introduced me or actually showed the prayer wall to a group in Pittsburgh that saw the YouTube of the prayer wall. And I flew to Pittsburgh last weekend, and I'm going to go be building a gun violence memorial for, yeah. And, that's the power of vision. And that particular situation is deemed one of the most dangerous cities in America. And this group of women were three of the happiest people I'd ever met in my life. They'd all been affected by gun violence, a family member. They pushed a binder across to me, and it was 131 kids have been murdered since 2017. And I'm going to build a memorial for these kids. And so sitting in that and talking to them, I realized it was a very dark, dismal, depressing spot in this country beside this huge steel place, U.S. Steel, which is dark, dirty. But I stood there, and in my mind, I went, you know what? I'm a dang lighthouse. I will bring the light to this darkness, and I know that. And I know that's why, because it's not about the stone. It's not about the wall. It's not about the structure. It's about the ministry inside of yourself. and I cultivate my inner world just like you do your workout. You work out your mind, you work out your heart. And I feel like that's what I do on a daily basis, like the knitters. You know, it's like when I'm in that world or in that zone, and I hate that word zone because it's so like, cliche, but it's true. It's like when you're in that place, that is the divine. And that's what we're all supposed to be doing, is focusing on that part instead of worrying about everybody else's, I'm not going to do it, stuff. So anyway, that's all I got. I hope that you enjoy the things out there, and I hope it continues to grow. And I do have a vision for more if I get chosen to do that. So, thank you.
Jill Haney, our new associate minister, she just doesn't know it yet. So back when I was having the vision, the thing I kept seeing, and the board saw this, I said, it's a tree of life. So when Jill told me that, and she did not know what Axis Mundi represented, some of you probably do, but if you don't, would you show us that slide? You may have to back up. It's the axis of the earth. It's been known through centuries as a place that is a point between heaven and earth. And yet it's not really one place. And it's the greatest symbol is of a tree. The tree of life is the greatest symbol for this. Over the years, T.S. Eliot pointed to it when he said it's the still point of the turning world. It's been called the tree of life, Jacob's ladder, the cosmic mountain, Mount Zion, Mount Olympus, Mount Fuji. The Native Americans call it the Black Hills. It's been called Mecca, the place of the living spirit, the active connection of spirit on earth. To me, that was Jill validating that we have ordained this as a sacred place of heaven on earth, and it is that. And each and every one of you are that, and you too are that. So I want to thank you for that. Come on up, band. Let's sing into a meditation. So this week, I hope you'll spend some time. What is your vision for yourself? What is your vision? And write it down and begin to live around it and live into it. And know that you can upgrade it every day, anytime. Write that vision and live into it, because I promise you it is about who you will become in the process. Open the eyes of my heart, love. Sing it with me. Open the eyes of my heart, love. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see. I want to be you. Open the eyes of my heart, love. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to be you. Sing it out. Open the eyes of my heart, love. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to be you. Open the eyes of my heart, love. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you, and I want to be you. I want to be you. So I invite you to just close your eyes for a moment. Just allow your awareness to go within. Just take a breath a moment and let every thought, just let it go. If you look up at the sky and see the sky, We see presence, spaciousness. And then we begin to see clouds that move across that sky. Sometimes we confuse ourselves and we think I'm this cloud or I'm that cloud. Or I'm so caught up in the storm that's moving through. We need to make time to let it all go. To remember we are the presence. That there is one power, one presence, one life that expresses through all creation, and that is your life. That is my life. To be born is to come into a physical form. To be born means that you carry within you the seeds of your nature, the seed of your kind of expressing. As is the flower in the seed, so there is a divine seed within each and every one of us. No worry about the name of that seed. But it is that divine pattern of all we are created to be. We have within us the capacity to be pure channels of radiant light and love. We have within us the capacity to be brilliant beings of joy and abundance and love and connection and deep compassion. The willingness to be truly honest. The willingness to be truly accountable. The willingness to live into our highest possibility. And just as surely as each plant has within it written the divine idea of what it is to become, so do you. And just as no two plants are exactly the same, neither of you are exactly the same. Do not compare yourself. Know thyself. Know what makes your heart sing. Know what makes your heart cry. Know what you long for, what you're reaching toward. Know what is within you that wants to come to life, to be expressed, to be let out. Your vision matters. Our world in this day is swirling with chaos and confusion and distraction. But the great teacher said, have no fear, for you can overcome the world, meaning that you don't put your head in the sand, but you realize, yes, this is going on, but I am a spiritual being, drawing my existence from a spiritual world. I am not only subject to the effects, but I am cause. And so I call forth the I am. I am sanity in the midst of chaos. I am wisdom in the midst of confusion. I am justice in the midst of unjust. I am love in the midst of fear and hatred. I am empathy in the midst of apathy. I am hope in the midst of sorrow. I am that I am. May my eyes and my heart be opened, that I may be the way as only I can be. So open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, love. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. So would you open your eyes and wiggle your fingers and your toes and bring yourself back. And bring back a smile. A smile connects you with joy. It's hard to be irritated if you're smiling, really smiling. So I'm going to invite you to stand and sing it with us one more time. Open the eyes of my heart. Here we go. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Sing it out. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to be you. One more time. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. We sing open. Let us be open. I want to be you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see